economic benefits of the 6 gigahertz band. And may I invite on stage our distinguished session chair, Shri M.K. Patnaik, Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor, WPC. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Inviting our keynote speakers, Mr. Alan Norman, Director Public Policy Meta. A warm welcome to you once again, sir. Inviting Shri Paramjeet Singh Puri, Director of Membership Wi-Fi Alliance. A very warm welcome. Inviting Mr. Anmol Kulkarni, Director Research, Consumer, Utility and Trust Society, International. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Also inviting eminent panelist, Shri Leeladhar Meghwal, Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor, WPC. Inviting Dr. Satya N. Gupta, Secretary General, IAFI. Warm welcome to you, sir. Inviting Shri Nadeem Akhtar, Product Manager, Arista Networks. So ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to this session. The time duration for the session is approximately 1 hour 30 minutes, which includes the opening and closing remarks by our chair, 3 presentations, 3 keynote presentations by our 3 eminent speakers, Mr. Norman, Mr. Puri, and Mr. Kulkarni, which will be followed by a panel discussion session. So ladies and gentlemen, for the opening remarks, I hand over to our session chair, Mr. M.K. Patnaik. Over to you, sir, for your opening remarks and to carry forward the proceedings of the session.
So, can we start? Madam, can we start? Okay, thank you. So, dear participants, to the second Indian Spectrum Management Conference 2022, I welcome you to the post-lunch session of the conference, and it's indeed a privilege for me to anchor this session for you. We are going to talk about something very important, something very topical, something very special today, and the discussion is about maximizing the socio-economic benefits of the 6 gigahertz frequency band. As you all know already that 6 gigahertz frequency band comprises of about 1200 megahertz of spectrum, which covers the entire 6 gigahertz band, and it also takes part of the 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz, very small portion though. It also takes very small, tiny percentage of a portion of the 5 gigahertz and 7 gigahertz frequency bands. In the radio regulations, this band has been allocated to the fixed service, to the fixed satellite service, and the mobile service on an equal primary basis. The 6 gigahertz frequency band has a long and glorious history of satellite use in India, especially in the fixed satellite service in the Earth to space direction. The importance of the 6 gigahertz frequency band for satellite related use for a tropical country like ours is too well known for me to repeat again. This band is used for a variety of purposes, ranging from entertainment to education to government to the strategic users also. This band is also used for feeder link applications for the other services in the L band as well as the S band, especially the mobile satellite service. Besides, this band is also used to provide telemetry, tracking and telecommand applications, especially in the planned portion of the band. However, in recent years, a few new applications have emerged which promises value, greater value perhaps. For example, some countries, in many of them in the ITU region R2 and some of them in R3, have found value in using this band for Wi-Fi use. On the other hand, one WRC 23 agenda item is also looking into the possibility of identifying part of this band for IMT under the mobile service allocation in the radio regulation. So in the discussion that will follow, it will be interesting for us to see what actually holds out the maximum possible value use for this frequency band from the perspective of its overall socio-economic benefits. We already have the satellite-based services. We already have a fixed services which the mobile operators use extensively. Now there are new applications on the horizon. Let us see, because as a country as a whole, this is our responsibility to see that we derive the maximum value proposition from this band. So I have the galaxy of speakers that I have today with me is really impressive. We have Mr. Alan Norman, who is the Director of the Public Policy of Meta, and he will be talking to us about critical importance of 6 gigahertz for future applications of Wi-Fi. And then we have Mr. Paramjit Singh Puri, who is Director in the Wi-Fi appliance, and he is going to talk to us about maximizing the socio-economic benefits of the 6 gigahertz. The third, Mr. Siddharth Narayan, and he is from the Consumer Unity and Trust Society, CURTS International, and he is going to deliver his address or address us on study of 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Then I have my colleague and friend, Mr. Leeladhar Meghwal, and then last but not the least, Mr. Satya N. Gupta, renowned author, and we are all fortunate to have them on dais today. So without any further waste of time, I think I would hand over the dais to our first speaker, Mr. Alan Norman. Please take it away, sir.
IFI for this opportunity. I'd like to talk about the importance of the 6 gigahertz band for the metaverse and for India, and why Wi-Fi is so important. Next slide, please. Oh, I think he's, okay. So let's think about how we used to interact over our mobile networks and our devices. It was mostly by texting. Think of your BlackBerry and the messaging. Okay, so then what happened next was people started sharing photos. Now today, people are sharing videos, if you think about TikTok and Instagram Reels. But what's next will be an immersive experience where you can interact in a way where you're shared it together in a single space. That's the vision for what the metaverse is. Okay, sorry, I need to just make sure we're getting the slides to work. So, work has been done to understand what the economic opportunity is. Think of this as a technological transformation, not unlike when we went from before the internet to the internet, or when we had mobile phones replacing the desktop PC. You'll see all sorts of new devices, different ways of interacting, and that will create huge opportunities when these disruptions happen. And therein lies a huge opportunity for India with the rich resources in software, in content creation, in terms of all sorts of things around the digital economy. And our estimate is that it's over 3 trillion in global GDP and perhaps 240 billion US in GDP for India. It's a significant opportunity. Let me go through some of the applications and motivate why that's the case. Next, please. Next slide. So here's an example of one product that Meta has on the product now, which is the Oculus Quest Pro. It is a virtual reality headset. There are applications today in the market that use this headset, and I will give you some examples. The next product, next slide please, is Ray-Ban Stories. That is a set of sunglasses or glasses developed by Luxottica jointly with Meta, where there's a camera and there's a microphone. But over time, what you'll do is that these glasses will replace what that headset is that I showed you previously. And that's the challenge and why we need 6 gigahertz. So I'll go through some of that. Next slide, please. So some of the applications that are around today. You can have virtual meetings, holographic communications where you can see someone in another room, workforce training, virtual conference and events, robots are being used, and AR/VR used for training. Next slide, please. Some of the consumer applications, people can participate in virtual events that are live. Some people are there in physical presence, some are remote. Shopping, multiplayer cloud gaming, and fitness. There's one application, next slide please. And don't play the video just yet, I want to motivate this. This is a video that shows how VR is being used to train people for health. And in particular training doctors. And this is something that's happening today. It's not something that will happen. And what's important about it to understand is this is the kind of thing where you can save time, money, and really innovate. So please, go ahead.
Want children to be sick with emergencies, but that rarity presents itself a training problem. Because pediatric emergencies are low-frequency, high-stakes events, training methodology to gain experiential learning, we have to basically create these experiences without causing harm to the patients. The most common way that we replicate that experience is through mannequin-based simulation. And that's how you train for different procedures, including resuscitations and how to assemble as a team. But mannequin-based simulation is costly both in time and effort. So that's when we built the simulation in virtual reality.
Doctor, this is a 7-year-old female who started developing a rash and difficulty breathing at a Chinese restaurant.
My belly hurts!
Doctor, I heard wheezing on my exam.
Doctor, please help my little girl.
Doctor, what do you want to do?
If we think it's anaphylaxis, I should intubate her before the airway closes.
Go for an intubate now.
I think virtual reality really complements the mannequins because in the VR, you have that emotional stress of a parent saying, like, my child is dying. That gets your heart racing, your palms are sweating, and you need to refocus with those elements there. So this mirrors what you're going to feel to some degree in a real life emergency.
Yeah, it only took 18 seconds for you to intubate. That's like amazing. That you make mistakes, you learn the consequences, you get feedback, and you try again to correct those mistakes. That's how people learn. In low-frequency, high-stakes events, there is no room for mistakes. The virtual reality setting provides a safe educational arena for you to practice and practice over and over again until you get better and better. Those mistakes can be made there, you learn from it, and then when the real thing happens, you'll be ready.
You're learning where your knowledge gaps are, and that allows you to improve if you ever do encounter those situations again. And that should translate into you being a better doctor. There's so many different ways to help children and children's health, and we owe it to the kids to perform at our best.
Next slide. So education, training, are some of the key applications that are being developed today that people are using, and I think they will be important everywhere. But what will it take to make this happen? Here's a network diagram, and we've all looked at all the links. At the very end of this network is the very last hop. And that last hop maybe is for 90% of the devices and use cases is going to be Wi-Fi. And there are a variety of reasons for that. The backhaul to my phone may be 5G, it may be fiber, but from here to my glasses or the headset is going to be Wi-Fi. And that's why 6 gigahertz is so important. And let me talk about the 6 gigahertz band. Next slide, please. So what's unique about the 6 gigahertz band is the number of large channels. With the full 1200 megahertz of band, you have now 160 megahertz channels in quantity 7 or 320 megahertz channels. That is not possible in any other band. And what makes these channels unique is that in the large channels that you can offer not only higher throughput, but you can deliver much lower latency at much lower power consumption, which enables the miniaturization. And let me go into a little more detail. Next slide, please. So when you're delivering a virtual reality or XR experience, there's several ways to architect the devices. One is you can put all the computing right on the device itself. That's what we call local rendering. The problem with that is it's expensive, it's hard to move around and hard to wear over a long time, and it's not as comfortable as it needs to be. So over time, what we want to do is we want to move the rendering of that experience onto other devices. So the first step might be to put it in the phone, connected to a 5G network, but that phone might be in your pocket. And move as much of the processing there, so this just becomes a very simple display. Eventually, we want to get it all the way into the cloud, but that's going to take a lot of investment in fiber and much better networks than we have today. The goal is to reach a 10 millisecond one-way latency. Next slide, please. So the large channels and enough large channels enable low latency. That's critical for solving the motion sickness challenge and making it so that you have a real-time experience where there's no delay. Next slide. The large channels also enable sustainable throughput and having enough channels. And so everyone knows about issues of contention, but you also have the advantage when you have larger channels that you can get on and off the network more quickly, and so that allows more users to operate at the same time. Next slide. And another benefit that actually is a little bit counterintuitive is larger channels and higher power actually save energy. And that enables much smaller form factors. So, you know, typically when I'm operating this phone and I have a long link to a connection to a base station, the phone will get hot because it's putting out so much energy. You can't have something that's, that hot right next to your body. So having large channels, again, enables you to get it on and off the network quickly, use lower power, generate less thermal. So that's another very important enabler. Next slide. So you put all that together, you need a quality of experience that you can rely on. And that's why, again, having enough spectrum makes it important. It's, you know, if you think about in this venue or in your home, Wi-Fi as a technology doesn't have a lot of QoS built into it. But everybody can do phone calls, you can do video conferences. Why? Because there's enough spectrum. It's a very simple solution, but it's elegant in its simplicity and makes things very low cost. And that's why it's so widely adopted and become the prevalent technology in so many different use cases. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about the 6 gigahertz band globally and what's happening and how it fits into the WRC and what's going on. So in April of 2020, the US Federal Communications Commission opened the 6 gigahertz band, the full 1200 megahertz. In the last 2.5 years, 31% of the world's GDP has opened up that band and moving forward. In region 2, you can see most of the countries have opened up the 1200 megahertz. In region 3, you can see that some countries have opened up the lower 500. Korea is the one exception, has opened all 1200 megahertz. Japan is also looking and stated publicly that they're looking how to move forward on opening up the full band. And other countries in Region 3 are in a wait-and-see mode to see what happens in Europe and at WRC. And in particular in Europe, they've opened the lower 500, and there's been a big debate on what to do on the upper 700. And what I can say is Europe doesn't have consensus yet. There's some countries, France, for example, who's proposing that the license, that the upper 700 megahertz should be designated for IMT. Just recently as today, next slide please, UK Ofcom has said we recommend no change. And so our expectation is that Germany will do something along the same lines, and Europe will probably not be able to come to a common position, and therefore they'll decide to wait until after WRC as they understand what happens in this band more broadly. Next slide. So let's look at India. Here's a map of the 6 gigahertz band. What are the key services that are in this band? As fixed satellite, in particular uplink. They're fixed links, point-to-point microwave. There's, my guess, but I don't know this, there's probably different Earth observation services, radio astronomy, like there are in Japan and Europe and other places that are looking at the band. These services are hard to move and hard to replace. Wi-Fi and other low-power operation, whether it's, like for example, even 5G unlicensed if it's operating at low enough power, as small cells, they can coexist. Indoor operation can coexist. High-power IMT, outdoor, studies have been done, and it's pretty clear that looking at the assumptions that high-power operation cannot coexist with those services. If you're going to find a way to allocate those, you're going to have to clear the band and find a way to put those services in a new home somewhere, which would take a long time. Broadband India Forum did a study that has been published through RKF to make that point available. If you're interested in getting more data on that, and then there are many studies through the ITU Working Party process in ITU Region 1 that are on these studies, and if you look at the assumptions carefully, I'd argue that high power operation does not coexist, low power can coexist with those services, and that's the general question, is what then are the economics? And the economics for Wi-Fi and unlicensed operation, I think are very compelling. There's a lot of different use cases and applications, not just the metaverse, but as an adjunct to improving connectivity and delivering multi-gigabit speeds. And I'm not sure what the value is on small cell. We'll have to see. Next slide. So the next question is, do we need the full 1200 megahertz, or is 500 enough? Here's a standard hexagon diagram. This is produced by Cisco, looking at enterprise Wi-Fi deployments. And what you'll notice is the vast majority in 5 gigahertz deployments are done in 40 megahertz. And why? Because they have enough channels in 40 megahertz channels in the 5 gigahertz band to make a deployment model where you cannot have any adjacent channel operation. I know that seems, well, if you're an IMT advocate, you'd say, well, we can do co-channel, adjacent channel operation in the same frequency. But you can't do it at this cost where people pay for their own deployment, buy their own equipment, and put it up in their own home or in their own business. So one argument is, if you want to have the impact of making 6 gigahertz deliver something new, what you need to do is have larger channels. And to make the larger channels feasible, you need enough of them so you can make the jump from 40 to 80. That requires, and even 160, that requires the 1200 megahertz. Next slide, please. We've done some work as Meta simulating having an environment like this, or a classroom environment, where many people are using VR at the same time, and looking at the classroom simulation, and happy to provide more on this. But the takeaway is, with 3 channels, you can, and 20 students per classroom, you can support 2 classrooms, and after that, the performance goes down. Whereas with 7 channels, because again of the spatial separation, we're able to support up to 14 classrooms or even more. If you look at that, it'll degrade gracefully over time. So you really get over the knee of the curve in terms of what is the scalability and the use of this band, not just for individual small limited number of people using the band, but large venues, classrooms, enterprise, and so on. Next slide. So the other thing I want to point out is there's some lessons to be learned in Europe about how 5G is being deployed. This is from the European Commission, published in May of this year. And the statistics on the right are showing the percentage of base stations deployed in a particular band. What you'll notice is that all but 3.5% of the base stations are in sub 3 gigahertz, sharing with the 4G base stations. Why is that? Because the cost of deploying new infrastructure in the field, adding new towers, adding new backhaul, is extremely costly. So in fact, the economics of the 5G deployment in Europe are that they're going to use their existing base stations and infrastructure to deploy 5G. Over time, they will use the 3.5 gigahertz band. In fact, I hope they use more of 3 gigahertz, and I hope that there's a lot more that can be done there in terms of growing the capacity of the network. But my point is, for 5G, the sub 3 gigahertz band is also very important. And I don't think that's been a topic that people have really talked about. It's all been about 3 gigahertz and 6. So just something to understand as you think about what is the right policy in terms of promoting better 5G. Next slide. So, why designate the entire 6 gigahertz band now for unlicensed use? One is you have a large common market. If you reduce the capability of the equipment to just 500 megahertz, you have devices that are built for the whole band, but you have to disable some of the functionality. There's increased cost in doing that, and the likelihood of people upgrading later, if you take a step-by-step approach, is proven to be very limited. Most people don't touch their devices once they have them. And then finally, making the entire 6 gigahertz band allows people to future-proof their devices for not just Wi-Fi 6, but when Wi-Fi 7 comes along and next-generation Wi-Fi technologies that will have larger channels like the 320s, you future-proof your equipment. And finally, the alternatives are speculative. Next slide, please. So, and what I mean by speculative is it's not clear that 6 gigahertz is practical for IMT 2020 or IMT 2030. And the reason is the propagation. You'd have to have such a high density of deployment in terms of where the infrastructure is to make it have any kind of reasonable coverage indoors that it would be so expensive that it would be economically impractical. And what happens is, as you go up in frequency from 1.8 to, or 2.4 to 3 gigahertz to 6, the attenuation increases. Second is there's a focus on reducing carbon footprint. Newer buildings are built more sustainably. Their windows have much more insulation, which makes it harder for the propagation to get indoors. And finally, if you think about where people spend their time, it's 90% indoor. So now what's happened is to actually get access to this band and use it, it's going to have indoor penetration. So that means the deployments outdoor are not going to reach indoor, so you have to do indoor deployments. And I ask how many base stations in terms of IMT and telco are done indoors. It's typically DAS. It's fairly limited. So outdoor IMT cannot achieve the high throughput and low latency that we need. And it's going to be a problem indoor. So to me, this argues that 6 gigahertz is not the right band. Lower frequency would be better fit. Next slide, please. The second thing is there's a robust ecosystem today that's already developing. And I think my colleague Pramjit will talk some more about what's happening at the Wi-Fi Alliance. But as of October of this year, there are over 620 devices already certified at the Wi-Fi Alliance the last 2 years. Smart TVs, smartphones, laptops, access points, and all sorts of other devices. And so this ecosystem is here now, and there are devices that are available globally. Next slide. So, and what are some of the deployments? So operators, who we've spent a lot of time debating the 6 gigahertz band with, of course, once it's available, they're embracing it already. So for example, in Europe, Orange, Bouygues, Vodafone, Swisscom have all implemented Wi-Fi 6E boxes and deploying with their fixed line networks already so they can deliver multi-gigabit speeds. Next slide. Similarly, in the US, Comcast, Bell Canada, or North America, Comcast and Frontier have done the same. And in some cases, you have 5G actually is the backhaul, and then you have this access point. And so there you have an example where the two are working together. So this ecosystem is already going, and what's the motivation? It's multi-gigabit speeds, so you don't compromise your investment in your large broadband network and all the fiber and choking it off at the very end, at the very last hop, which is what 6 gigahertz is enabling in terms of gigabit speeds. Next slide. So here's an example. Just recently, Apple's now included the 6E in the iPad Pro. Next slide. This is an interesting deployment, the University of Michigan, and how important Wi-Fi 6E is for education. They've just deployed 16,000 access points in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan campus. And their goal is to really enable gigabit speeds for everybody on the campus in as low-cost way as possible. And they looked carefully at the alternatives, and they decided that this was the most efficient way to do that campus-wide, both indoor and outdoor on the campus. Next slide. Another example is stadiums. The delivering, imagine when there's a goal scored and everyone wants to see the replay of what's happening and the demand on the network. What's happening is stadiums are now deploying very dense Wi-Fi networks and using 6E to do that, to deliver those kinds of experiences. So expect to see that here. We saw that at the Super Bowl in the United States. So these are just some examples of how this ecosystem is already moving now, moving forward and deploying and taking advantage of that. And I'm hoping, should India move forward, to see the same kind of rapid adoption for the 6 gigahertz band and technology around that. One more slide, please. So why delicensing 6 gigahertz is good for India? Let me just recap, and this is my last slide. Thank you. First of all, it's good economic policy. There's a lot of economic value that can be created here. I realize you're foregoing upfront licensing revenue, but there's a lot of significant downstream economic benefits across the economy. Second, it's good spectrum policy. 40% of internet data, or approximately 2 exabytes a month, travels over Wi-Fi today. There's only 0.6 gigahertz of spectrum authorized for Wi-Fi versus 4 gigahertz when you include including millimeter wave for licensed mobile. Authorizing 6 gigahertz is a logical choice for lowering costs, improving broadband availability. But opening the full 6 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi will also better serve rural communities. As we heard this morning, one of the very common architectures, whether it's using 5G wireless, fixed wireless, or whether it's fiber, the very last hop will be Wi-Fi. This enables the much broader speeds that people are looking for. And finally, I think there's a global opportunity in India to take advantage of the 6 gigahertz band as a way to create economic value and export technology in terms of software, in terms of the creator economy and content development, and as well as equipment. But if you don't have your home market where it's not available, it's much harder to motivate people to go ahead and produce that. And so here you have many parts of the rest of the world taking advantage of this band, and it would be almost putting local technology firms and developers at a disadvantage if they can't even serve their own market. Thank you. Appreciate your time and attention.
So let us thank Mr. Norman, and there was quite a informative speech, a discourse on the advantages of the Wi-Fi 6 and the Wi-Fi. The 6 gigahertz. We can exploit it with the higher versions of Wi-Fi 7, 6E, and then it's nice to learn that already applications are there, and then it can also benefit the rural economy. In the metaverse also, the success of metaverse, which supports a lot of real-time applications and which deliver on the front of low latency and support applications which have real-time need. are supported by this. And the 6 gigahertz importance of 6 gigahertz has been adequately highlighted by Mr. Norman. My point here is that we also hear a lot of things about the Y-gig spectrum almost supporting similar kind of activities. Like when he said that some of the user applications, say from a Google Lens to the mobile phone, that can be supported in the 6 gigahertz. But my curiosity is that also it can be supported by Y-gig kind of application where we have enough spectrum available. Why should that? But then these are the questions, these are the thoughts, input for thoughts that we may actually reserve for the end of the session, but these are some of the thoughts perhaps we can address at the end of the session. Why other parts of the spectrum cannot be used? For example, supposing this spectrum is not available, then will metaverse be unsuccessful? That will be a question that I would like to understand at the end of the discussion today. So let us invite, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paramjit Singh Puri, Director of Membership, Wi-Fi Alliance, and let us hear from him. Mr. Puri, the stage is yours.
Thank you. This one, upar wala. I would like to thank Mr. Patnaik for his opening remarks and Alan for giving us, inroad into, the world of Wi-Fi and unlicensed and 6 gigahertz. In the last 1.5 days, we've been talking, mostly about cellular, and we've been talking about paid spectrum, but not much attention has been paid on the unlicensed part of the business, which is probably as important, if not more important, because today the most underrated and the most unappreciated communication technology of the globe is Wi-Fi. But people don't realize that, and unfortunately more so in India. And I always like to start my remarks, with, whenever I'm speaking in India, that, that unfortunately our telcos and our government have not put that kind of importance into the unlicensed spectrum and into Wi-Fi as they have done into the paid spectrum, where billions and billions of dollars have been spent. But you can get practically almost the same results by not spending any money in the unlicensed spectrum here. So, and if you look at Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi has been growing from the last 20 years. It has been serving the community, whether it is consumer, enterprise, you name it, or supporting the cellular technologies for offload, and whatever applications have been there. It has been growing by leaps and bounds. And the economic value which has been given by Wi-Fi, which Wi-Fi has basically resulted into, is about $3 trillion in 2022, and which is expected to reach $5 trillion in 2025. But if you look at the spectrum availability for Wi-Fi for the last 20 years, there was nothing. It's only now, after 20 years, that we can talk about a new channel or a new spectrum, which is the 6 gigahertz for Wi-Fi, which enables a lot of extra beneficials at practically zero cost as compared to the cellular technology. And I'm not belittling the cellular technology. I mean, these two technologies have to coexist, they have to live hand in hand, and that is the way the world works. Yeah. So, obviously, it's when we spend more money, that technology, or that, we tend to pay more importance to that, and where there is not much money spent, we tend to pay less importance to that. And that is more the case in a beautiful country of India compared to the rest of the world. Yeah. So if you look at, countries like UAE, look at, Japan, Mexico, even a country like Senegal, and the entire European Union, there are more than 70 countries now which have opened the 6 gigahertz, for the Wi-Fi. But in India, I know you're all aware that we only opened up the 5 gigahertz fully just about 3-4 years back here. Even the 5 gigahertz was not opened by the government fully for Wi-Fi. It just got opened up 3-4 years back. So I don't know if there are any government folks over here. Of course, Mr. Patnaik is there representing the government, but I really wish, people from DOT and TRI and our telcos really take heed of this and look at, opening up the 6 gigahertz, which I'm going to talk more, following up, from where Alan left off, why the 6 gigahertz is suitable more for Wi-Fi and why the 6 gigahertz spectrum is not suitable for IMT technology. So that is what my main focus is going to be, and it's going to be a simple presentation. I'm not going to get into too much of technical details and things like that. But just a quick introduction to Wi-Fi Alliance. We are a 22 years old industry and trade organization. We have close to 1,000 members, and the likes of the Apple and the Samsungs and the Ciscos and the LGs and the Sonys and the Comcast and Dell, and they're on a board of directors, Qualcomm and all these companies, and so they're all on a board of directors. Yeah. And from India, out of the 1,000 plus members, we have about 18, 19 members, who are part of our organization. Yeah. Not counting the MNCs, but the Indian companies. Yeah. So this is just a snapshot of that. Yeah. We do a lot of work in development of Wi-Fi in terms of security, in terms of developing the technology for the next generation of Wi-Fi, and we do a lot of regulatory work and things like that. So the nomenclature of Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6, the WPA3 security, all this has come out, emanated from the work being done by our valued and esteemed members within the Wi-Fi Alliance and supported by the Wi-Fi Alliance staff. Yeah. So I'm going to talk, like I said, Wi-Fi and 6 gigahertz, and the topic of today's discussion is 6 gigahertz connecting to the future. A little bit about the trends, the considerations, and then the conclusions. So if you look at the trends, if you look at the amount of, the data which is consumed today, per monthly, which is close to 400 exabytes of data every month is consumed. And if you look at the pie which the Wi-Fi is consuming and compare it to the wired and cellular, this slide may come as a bit of a shock to many people who would be thinking that it's cellular which has the maximum pie, but more than 50% of the data is through Wi-Fi. And it has been growing over the years, as we can see from this slide here. The corollary to that is that the data growth and now and in the future is predominantly going to be indoors. So if you look at the indoor technology today, the current Wi-Fi, of course in India we are still working on Wi-Fi 5, most of the deployments. It's only a very small percentage of Wi-Fi 6 has come. Wi-Fi 6E, which is Wi-Fi 6 in 6 gigahertz, is non-existent in India because we haven't opened up the spectrum. But this is more global figures, more global share. So Wi-Fi 6 and 6E is dominating the indoor market scenario, and of course 5G is there for the outdoor. And already Wi-Fi 7 is slated to come out in 2024, and already work is started happening in Wi-Fi 8. And of course we are going to, 6G work in 6G is also started happening. But if you look at the pie over there, especially for the indoor applications, whether it's like retail or indoor enterprise or IoT or whatever AR, VR, XR applications, that is all going to be on Wi-Fi. So this is reality, my friends. This is not fudged numbers, these are real numbers here. So if you look at the mobile device traffic also, and yesterday there was a question by my friend Satya who asked, that, is 5G and 6G going to ring the death knell of Wi-Fi? So I think this slide probably answers that question, that with every new generation of cellular or licensed technology, the share of Wi-Fi becomes even more bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, these are not my numbers, these are numbers taken by the industry, after a lot of research, work has gone into this. Yeah. So I will not talk much, but the slide is evident that its Wi-Fi is growing by leaps and bounds and is there to stay. And both licensed 5G, 6G in the future, Wi-Fi 6 today and Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8, it'll coexist. They'll live in existence with each other. Trend number 3, distributed cloud computing, which are next generation use cases. So if you look at the kind of next generation use cases from the technology perspective, of course, Mr. Narang asked this very important question yesterday, that what about sustainability and things like that. But unfortunately, sustainability and the environmentability is not going to stop the growth of technology, and the younger generation will still keep on pushing for new experiences, immersive experiences like augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, telehealth, industrial IoT, automation, 3D video, etc., etc. And all this requires connectivity hundreds, if not thousands of times faster than 5G. And only that, the Wi-Fi can give you that, because most of these applications are going to be indoors there. So this cannot be delivered by a wide area network such as IMT. It can only be delivered by a local area short range communication, such as the next generation Wi-Fi technologies designed for extremely high throughput and spectral reuse. Let's look at the considerations. Consideration number one, 6 gigahertz is transforming Wi-Fi technology. And I know that, in India, we are still behind, but, I would like to give this global picture so that we in India know that, what's happening in the rest of the world. And hopefully, we're able to take some lessons, and start, applying them in our country and not be a laggard, in the technologies, whether it is in the licensed technology or in the unlicensed technology. So that is, so if you look at the Wi-Fi 6C, which is Wi-Fi 6 in the 6 gigahertz, the capabilities required for advanced use cases, faster speed, low latency, higher throughput, higher density, all this is available today through Wi-Fi 6C. So whether it is industrial IoT or home IoT or extended reality or augmented reality or virtual reality, telehealth and telepresent, holographic presentation, all this can be done through Wi-Fi 6C today, and Wi-Fi 7, which is around the corner here. So if you look at the numbers, in 2022, this year, over 1.5 million Wi-Fi 6E access points were shipped, and more than 350 million Wi-Fi 6E devices were shipped here. And in 2024, this number is going to go up to more than 5 million access points and over 350 million, Wi-Fi 6E devices. And, the Wi-Fi Alliance has already certified 660 Wi-Fi 6E devices as of today. A little bit about Wi-Fi 7, because, a lot of people have asked me this question about Wi-Fi 7s. So with Wi-Fi 7, you will be able to get into applications like more enhanced AR, VR, and XR, industrial IoT, automotive, telepresence, telehealth, immersive 3D, etc. With higher data rates, with stringent latency, very practically nil latency, and of course, quality of service. Yeah. So if you look at, the data transfer rates of Wi-Fi 7, 30 Gbps is the average, but it's slated to actually touch 40 Gbps here. And we are talking about Wi-Fi 8, which will probably touch 100 Gbps of data speeds. Yeah. Work has already started on that. Yeah. And 92 million units of Wi-Fi 7 are expected to ship out in 2024. So if you look at the consideration number 2, 6 gigahertz frequency band is uniquely suited to meet the growing need for Wi-Fi, and it is not suited to meet the need for the IMT technology. And unfortunately for Wi-Fi, there is no alternative spectrum now or in the future. So whether it is the the 160 megahertz band, or whether it is the 320 megahertz band in which Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8 will play, it is the 6 gigahertz frequency which is there, which is tailor-made for an unlicensed technology like Wi-Fi and not suitable for the IMT technology. And hence, our request is to the Indian government, to the Indian powers to be, that they should seriously look at opening up the 6 gigahertz spectrum here. Consideration number 3, the IMT networks in 6.425 to 7.125, which is the 1200 spectrum of availability in the 6 gigahertz, is not too feasible. I'd say not too feasible. It is an expensive proposition, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that. And countries in all the regions are deploying 6.4 type to 7.125 for the Wi-Fi deployment and not for the IMT deployment. IMT frequency harmonization cannot be achieved. There is no interoperability between devices, etc., etc., etc. And market fragmentation, precludes the economies of scale necessary for this. Yeah. So if you look at, you can read this slide, but just to quickly, read it for you guys. Billions of dollars to design and produce cellular chipsets in 6.4 to 7.125 gigahertz. Billions of dollars to integrate the chipsets into devices and bring them to market. Billions of dollars to deploy IMT technology network. Billions of dollars to operate the IMT network here. So that's a lot of billions, and which is not required by Wi-Fi because it already exists. Yeah. And nobody is going to risk this lot of billions till the time there is a stable regulatory framework around it. Yeah. And today, the last line, very important, that no 6 gigahertz IMT equipment on the market or in the near future. So this is a very important consideration, number 3, for opening up the 6 gigahertz for the unlicensed or Wi-Fi, and and not to look at it for the IMT bandwidth there. And if you look at the upcoming Wi-Fi advances, IoT, already Wi-Fi is there, working seamlessly on both home IoT and industrial IoT, because it's a standards-based interoperable technology. It is a pervasive connectivity because everything is connected through mobile devices, and Wi-Fi allows the seamless control of smartphones, tablets, and there are already 18 billion Wi-Fi devices out there in the market here. Proven WPA3 security, so security cannot be used as an excuse any longer, which it used to be 7-8 years back when you used to say that security is an issue in Wi-Fi, but no, not any longer. Yeah. And cost-effective, simple deployment, backward compatibility, location awareness, sophistication among other core competencies. Yeah. So again, a little bit more about Wi-Fi 7, because the Wi-Fi Alliance has already started building up the certification program for Wi-Fi 7, and it normally takes about 18 to 24 months for the certification program to come out. And it's already, the work started in the early 2022 for our certification program, and it will be ready by 2024. And so what do we expect from Wi-Fi 7? Extremely high throughputs, practically nil or very low latency, and jitter and high reliability. And these are all the hallmarks of the cellular technology, because that's what the cellular technology boasts about. Low latency, high speed, reliability, things like that. And you get everything with the Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7, what is available on the cellular side. Yeah. And like I mentioned about our certification, which is very important for the backward compatibility and the interoperability and the security. We're already working on it, and the analysts predict that the Wi-Fi 7 shipments will comprise 2% of all the Wi-Fi shipments in 2024. So, which is just, we're already entering 2023, so practically the next year, 2024, we'll have 2% of all the Wi-Fi shipments happening on Wi-Fi 7. Extended reality is a very emerging, exciting opportunity, which is there, and a lot of people, a lot of organizations like, Alan's organization, Meta, Apple, Samsung, Google, Amazon, and many other organizations are already developing products. They're already developing, products for XR, and that's going to soon become a reality, and is going to be a $125 billion market by 2026. Yeah. And today itself, Wi-Fi in Wi-Fi 6E, VR, AR is already helping. There's so many applications in terms of, telehealth and medicine, which, Alan showed that excellent video, which was a prime example of, how Wi-Fi 6E is driving, AR, VR to help in the medical sciences. And also, I have a video for, how it helps, help heal soldiers with PTSD, but for consideration of time, I'm not going to play that. But this presentation will be available, through ITU-APT, and you're most welcome to watch it in details. Yeah. So XR experiences requires very high performance Wi-Fi, in terms of advanced power efficiency, multi-gig performance, ultra-low latency, extreme reality, and all this is available through the Wi-Fi 6E and soon to come Wi-Fi 7 and the next to come Wi-Fi 8. So if you look at the regulatory considerations, the opening of the 6 gigahertz just started in April 2022, which is just about 2.5 years back. And if you look at in April 2020 and look at now, November 2022, you can see from the map, that how much of advancement has already happened in terms of opening up of the 6 gigahertz bandwidth for Wi-Fi. And whether it is in the full 1200 megahertz spectrum or whether it is partial, so it's a combination of both today. But many countries are already, looking at adopting the full 1200 megahertz channel there. So the 6 gigahertz regulatory update, this is an example, a snapshot of, the countries which have adopted, complete from 5925 to 6425, and those who have adopted the full 5.925 to 7125. And in Americas, APAC, Europe, MENA region, even small countries like Tunisia, Senegal have opened up, and we in India still nowhere in the picture here. I mean, despite we've been having talks with TRI, we've been having talks with DOT, but they have no answer as to when the 6 gigahertz will be available for our country here. And I would really request, Vikram, our friend from COI, I know that he's a cellular guy, but still, that if he can also help, put in his good word for opening up the 6 gigahertz with the powers to be in the government. Thank you. The 6 gigahertz regulatory framework basically operates on 3 power frequencies: very low power, indoor only, and of course the standard power devices, which is under the AFC, Automated Frequency Coordinated System, AFC system, for which Wi-Fi Alliance is a major player in that. Just a quick thing on that, who are the people who adopted VLP, LPI, and AFC? So in conclusion, I'd just like to, once again say, and carrying on from where, Alan from Meta left off, that why Wi-Fi 6E, why 6 gigahertz for Wi-Fi, and the importance of Wi-Fi today. Wi-Fi is optimized for high performance indoor, and hence delivers the bulk of the world's data traffic, which I just showed you in the previous slide. Whether it's on mobile phones or whether it is on laptops or whether it's on tablets or whichever device it is. And demand for Wi-Fi will continue to grow with increased 5G deployments and cellular generations. Wi-Fi 6E is a resounding success, and by 2024 there will be billions of devices installed globally, able to operate from 5.925 to 7.125 spectrum. Only countries that allow Wi-Fi access to the entire 6 gigahertz spectrum will be able to generate the economic value of Wi-Fi. Otherwise, they will not be able to, because Wi-Fi 7 operates on the 6 gigahertz channel. Of course, it's backward compatible, but the true value of Wi-Fi 7 and the upcoming Wi-Fi 8 will only be in the 6 gigahertz channel there. And the 320 megahertz channel is the way it will probably give you the maximum output of what we are talking about here. So in conclusion, 6 gigahertz is perfectly suited for Wi-Fi to continue to deliver the connectivity use cases. There is no alternative spectrum for Wi-Fi, and 6 gigahertz is unsuitable for IMT. So with that, I conclude my small talk. I hope it was a simple presentation, but at least I hope that, after lunch, which is a sleepy time, I've been able to talk about, something about this beautiful, lovely, phenomenal communications technology, which is free to us, operates on the unlicensed bandwidth called Wi-Fi, which unfortunately has not got its importance in the Indian market. Globally, it is recognized as one of the most important technology breakthrough to ever come out. But in India, unfortunately, it has not been recognized. And I really hope that all of you sitting over here can carry this message and put some pressure on our Indian government, a great government, and and make sure that they're able to open the 6 gigahertz for Wi-Fi and for unlicensed. Thank you so much. A lot of work is available on the Wi-Fi Alliance website if you want to learn more about the papers and the reports, on the economic value, and especially even for India, we've done a special study for India. It's all available on the Wi-Fi Alliance website, wifi.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puri. That was nice to hear you, especially the key performance indicators which you said, the data rates approaching 30 Gbps and the low latency. It is something similar to the experience that the next generation mobile services promise. Whenever a person travels and checks into a hotel, the first thing he checks whether it has got a robust Wi-Fi, high-speed Wi-Fi or not. Today also we have both the things together, but how many of us will finally check into a hotel which doesn't have a Wi-Fi or whose Wi-Fi doesn't work? Even if I have a high-speed mobile system working, still I am looking for a Wi-Fi connection. So we cannot live without Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is very important, and it's important, it's going to grow. This is undisputable. Having said that, Wi-Fi is yet to meet the same kind of ubiquitousness which mobile services has given us. Today I can just take out my car and travel anywhere and be connected. That kind of experience still I haven't achieved in Wi-Fi systems. So one of my friends who is part of this audience or our listeners was sharing an interesting experience with me. He said that when we talk about the next generation mobile services, the high data rates and the low latency is more expected from the higher bands. And the higher bands do face a challenge of power saving in the devices. When you have high data rates and high download speeds, then it definitely affects the battery life. Things are definitely going to change, and I may not be able to predict how things will be another 2 years down the line. But now, as it seems that the battle for 6 gigahertz is hotting up, and in the middle band spectrum particularly, and whether this is really suitable for mobile services or unsuitable for mobile services, time will say. Technologies are evolving. But nevertheless, it was nice to understand about the key performance indicators, about and another thing what I have observed is the moment you step into, say, a railway station or the airport, then the Wi-Fi is not working there. I am not getting the desired level of Wi-Fi performance or the experience that I get at home, perhaps, where I am working in a limited number of users. So given that, we must optimize optimize our spectrum use so that we get or we derive the maximum economic value out of it. So I once again thank Mr. Puri for bringing different perspectives of Wi-Fi voice in the 6 gigahertz band, different use cases. It was very enlightening. Thank you, Mr. Puri. So now I invite my third speaker of the afternoon, Mr. Amol Kulkarni, who is from the Consumer Utility and Trust Society, CUTS International Society. Take it away, sir. Take it, sir.
Okay, great. So, good morning. My name is Amol Kulkarni. I work with CUTS International, and it is a pleasure to be here, talk about our work and listen to some of the great things which have been said by Alan and Param and other speakers throughout the last 2 days. I think just before I begin to talk about what I am here to speak, very briefly, Alan touched about the macro GDP numbers and the economic benefits which Wi-Fi 6E or use of Wi-Fi in 6 GHz band will bring to the consumers. Param talked about, and Alan also talked about different use cases from a very top line angle. Param talked about the sort of inability of government to sort of look at some of these issues from a more inclusive manner. I think we are. International. CUTS is Consumer Unity and Trust Society. We are a non-profit, non-government, independent economic policy research and advocacy unit. We are currently implementing a study to explore consumer perspectives on Wi-Fi 6E. Basically, we root for consumer rights. We say that consumer should be and remains to be the reason to attract or the reason for being of all economic regulation. We push consumer rights through by rooting for optimal regulation, good governance, and rules-based trade. We have been doing that for past 40 years. And in that process, we have done a lot of evidence-based research, which is more consumer-facing. In this process, we have broken down some complex technical concepts in the technology space and in other sectors for consumers to benefit, understand what are their concerns, apprehensions, expectations, what are the potential benefits, and then take the feedback back from consumers to the regulators, for the regulators to understand better as to how can something benefit or work in a real world scenario. For instance, we did a lot of work around 5G, about demystifying reality from myths. We are currently working on developing an ethical framework for 6G. At the same time, we worked with Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to do exercises on regulatory impact assessment, which is doing ex-ante impact assessment of its regulations and policies through use of evidence. We also did a nationwide survey of TV consumers, which covered more than 15,000 consumers to understand their perspectives on how television viewership is evolving and what are the expectations. We are doing something similar on, say, OTT and the traditional players. And similarly, we are using an experience. We are in the process of implementing a study to understand what do consumers want from the next generation of Wi-Fi technology. What are their problems or challenges or concerns with whatever technology is currently present? How can we sort of synthesize and collate all these human stories and present in a more comprehensible manner to the regulators and governments and powers to be who are making decisions regarding delicensing or unlicensing such important spectrum. So I think some of this is already covered by both Alan and Param, but I just wanted to give you a big picture in terms of its both high-end consumers which are rooting for ultra high definition video streaming, work from home, edtech, health tech. A very interesting presentation or the video by Alan about first responders, and a lot of work is required around that in India particularly because of we have the highest rates of deaths by accidents. And the government is doing a lot of work around that. So I think some of what Alan said really fits well within the broader agenda of the government in terms of reducing accidental deaths. Similarly, PM Vani, reducing inequalities, mitigating harmful effects of climate change is something which really fits broadly within the agenda of Wi-Fi 6E or using the 6 GHz spectrum more optimally. India is also assuming presidency of G20, and its mission is one Earth, one family, and one future. And without looking at and addressing these problems of inequalities, which Wi-Fi has a huge role to contribute to, we cannot actually will not be able to actually fulfill the mission of our presidency of G20 and other leadership that the government has taken, maybe in climate change or sustainable development or any other area. So I think this was also covered. Broadly, there are several recorded benefits of a licensing 6 gigahertz. It's also stated that there are higher frequencies which will have tougher time to penetrate solid walls. They will have shorter ranges, and there are some devices which are not currently equipped with the standards. But while I understand the number of devices are increasing, but there could be some regulatory or other barriers which are sort of preventing such devices from entering into India, and that also needs to be looked at. And therefore, the cost of Wi-Fi 6E for normal consumer could be higher as compared to the Wi-Fi which is there. However, do they want larger range, or are they more price sensitive, and in case devices are not available, then what will they do? So I think there are a lot of trade-offs which are there when it comes to consumers and use of Wi-Fi 6E, and that is what we are trying to study in the study that we are currently doing, which basically we want to ask these questions in terms of what is the consumer perspective towards Wi-Fi 6E. As I had mentioned, what is their experience with existing Wi-Fi services? What is their expectation? How do they perceive the trade-off between some benefits and some risks which Wi-Fi 6E brings with? What are the use cases which they will use to? There is a lot of innovation which is likely to happen. And can we design a study, or can we preempt some of that innovation and then present it to the government in a manner that this is an untapped opportunity, untapped use cases which Wi-Fi 6E will cater to? And what are the barriers and challenges from the consumer end which will need to be overcome for ensuring that consumers are able to realize the full potential? So with these questions in mind, we are implementing something called as technology acceptance model. Now this model is a well-known model to understand why will a person adopt to a new technology which is currently not there in the market. It basically relies on 3 factors: perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, and subjective norms. So if it is perceived useful, which is basically an analysis of trade-off between cost and benefits, if it is easy to use, whether their supporting infrastructure is available, and whether there are subjective norms in terms of societal pressures, peers, and other people also utilizing that technology, then it is most likely that the consumers will intend to use such new technology. So can we design an intervention to test consumers' adoption of Wi-Fi 6E, and that is exactly what we are trying to do. We will expose, or we are exposing consumers to different Wi-Fi services at different existing bands which are there, and we are asking them to use those services for streaming, downloading, uploading, and doing interactive exercises. And we have added elements of, say, cost, reliability, density, range, more number of devices linked to one particular Wi-Fi, or some sort of interruption in between. And we are trying to gauge consumer behavior in terms of what is it that consumer sort of tend towards, whether they tend towards a cost-effective solution, or whether they tend towards a more reliable, uninterrupted, high efficiency, high speed solution. And we will be sort of doing a lot of choice experiments and stated and refill preference analysis to understand what do consumers really want, and present it in a more simpler manner to the government and to the policy influencers and regulators. At the same time, we are generating awareness amongst consumers of Wi-Fi 6E and its potential, because it's a two-way street. You tell them, and then you also learn from them. And we are sort of hoping to get a lot of insights from such consumer interactions. So we are trying to cover the entire country. the focus group discussions or these interventions will be deployed across the country. We will cover consumers from urban, rural, as well as peri-urban areas. We will ensure diversity in gender, education, age, income, and the idea is to highlight human stories. The idea is to understand what benefits Wi-Fi has accrued to consumers in their real life, and what will happen if there is high quality Wi-Fi which is available in near future, and then try to sort of justify that through some hypothesis and some analysis. As you notice, we are trying to cover all the zones in the country, from northeast to the west, from north to the south, and we hope to have a nationally representative picture in the next few months. We have already made some progress on our study. We already have a consumer explainer on unlicensed spectrum and Wi-Fi 6E use cases, which we are disseminating amongst other consumer organizations and public interest organizations and with the government. We are also currently working with the cross-jurisdictional analysis paper on Wi-Fi 6E. Going forward, we'll do those initiatives and we'll synthesize and publish findings in a user-friendly, reader-friendly manner, and also work with the government through interactions and other forums to make the consumer voice heard and ensure that the voice of consumer is not lost within this debate of whether to license or unlicense a spectrum wherein there are traditional giants, there are new tech companies, but at the end of it, it's just consumer who suffers or who benefits the most. So her voice needs to be heard. And with that, thank you. This presentation was small, but happy to have suggestions, comments, and happy to explore partnerships as well. This is my email ID, and happy to connect separately. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. That was a very different tone. We heard about the consumer behavior. Consumer behavior are shaped by a variety of factors, and it is heartening to see that they are examining or they are studying those consumer behavior patterns, what the consumer wants. Whether the success or failure of any new technology depends on whether the consumers accepts it or not. So, as he rightly said, that some of the studies are yet to be published or be, the results are expected. It would be nice to hear what are the results of the studies. And so thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. Thank you for coming and sharing your views. So now may I invite my colleague, Mr. Iladhar Meghwal, who is Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor in the WPC wing, to share his views. Mr. Meghwal, for you please.
Panelists and the distinguished participants who are participating in this session. After hearing so much about the Wi-Fi, I am daring to offload you from the Wi-Fi towards some real regulatory issues which are going to be faced by the regulator while managing this spectrum and the mid-band spectrum, which is very limited, and Wi-Fi and IMT both are equally desiring the spectrum and 1200 megahertz both. So there are some issues which are being addressed at the ITU level, and the challenges being faced in the frequency bands, which is 4.8 gigahertz as well as the 6 gigahertz, both the bands. So what is being transpiring at the ITU level? So I'll take you a little bit touch upon the 4.8 gigahertz as well as 6 gigahertz. So WRC 23 is going to address two of the most crucial agenda items. One is agenda item 1.1, wherein the protection of the aeronautical mobile services and the maritime mobile services are being talked about. And this is also one of the important mid-band spectrum, where is around 190 megahertz spectrum band is available, and around 40 countries are already having IMT in this band. wherein some PFD criteria, PFD limitations are there on the IMT networks, and which are to protect the aeronautical mobile services and aeronautical maritime mobile services in the international airspace and in the international water. This is one of the unique agenda item wherein there are so many uniqueness, because in whole RR there is no spectrum band where IMT has been identified and it has to protect the same stations operating in the same mobile services. So herein IMT, which is a notified, which is a registered network, has to protect the aeronautical mobile services as well as maritime mobile services in the international airspace wherein they are not registered in the MIFR with the ITU, but still they have to protect those networks. Similar provisions are there in the RR, wherein in the footnote 5.502 and 5.509D, therein the international maritime stations are to be protected from the GSO earth stations. So this kind of scenario is there, and wherein this stations are to be protected from the IMT identification. There are the enough work is going on, and so many work sharing studies are being conducted, and in this agenda item almost 8 methods have been identified to fulfill this agenda. Next agenda is agenda item 1.2, wherein the crucial this 6 gigahertz band which is being identified for the IMT in the region 1, and the 7 gigahertz only 100 megahertz spectrum which is being talked about for the global identification of the IMT. 3 other bands are also there, which is 3.4 and 3.6, as well as the 10 gigahertz band. 3.4 in India we already having the IMT, so we have no issue, but it is being identified for the region 1 through the footnote, wherein the some countries are already there in the for the IMT, but the additional countries can be added into that footnote. The another band is 3.6 and 10 gigahertz, which are being identified in the region 2 countries only, so we are very less bothered about it. This agenda item 1.1 has been entered on this agenda item. I mean, this footnote has been entered into WRC 15 when this when this footnote has been carved out by the WRC, wherein 3 countries have been identified. One is Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam for the IMT spectrum. But the PFD criteria which was identified therein was from the JTG 4567 study. So that was the very strict PFD limit, which was minus 155 dB watt per meter square per megahertz. And studies are to be conducted up to WRC 19 to revise that PFD criteria, but because of the many studies could not be conclusive up to WRC 19, those figures could not be revised. But in 2019, some around 40 countries, including South Africa, Korea, Iran, China, Russia, all have been added into that footnote for identifying IMT. And wherein in the resolution 2 to 3, resolve 5 is there, where around 11 countries have been exempted from that PFD criteria. So they are very well can deploy the IMT without any constraint, without any this thing to maintain the PFD level to protect the aeronautical mobile stations and maritime mobile stations. So this is one of the crucial band, and we have also submitted one contribution in this band, and wherein we had supported one of the method where the PFD criteria is being revised, and depending upon the different studies and from the different administrations. The issue in this band is more towards the regulatory and geopolitical nature, where some set of countries are pushing for protection of the aeronautical mobile and maritime mobile stations, whereas other countries who wants to have IMT in this band. There are studies from Russia, China, France, IFI, and most of the countries are already exempted from the IMT, the PFD limits. So they very well can have the IMT in this spectrum band. Some African countries are also suggesting to add their names in the Resolve 5 of the resolution, so that they can also be identified for the IMT without having any PFD limits and all. In our country perspective, we are having some fixed links, some fixed services in the lower part of this band, and some upper part of this band is totally free, and we can consider IMT supporting in this band. There are the 8 methods which have been identified for this band. So out of which the most of the methods are being supportive of the IMT, but with the revised PFD levels. So in the method C, there are different alternatives wherein different studies are suggesting different PFD levels. America, France, China, they are suggesting some relaxed PFD levels. Russia and IFI is also suggesting some relaxed PFD levels, and we are also in support of the method C. Some countries, some African countries are of the view that PFD levels are not required for protection of the AMS and MMS, and they want that only the coordination requirement under 9.21 is sufficient, and with the mutual coordination, with the common agreement between the couple of countries, they can adopt for the IMT in this frequency band. So next is this is agenda item 1.2. So wherein these frequency bands are being talked about, the 6 gigahertz most crucial frequency band, which has been identified in this agenda item, while considering that, while noting that the evolving need of the IMT to meet the demand of increasing proliferation of the IMT in the different higher bands and all. So considering this, we have submitted our contributions for the 6 gigahertz band also to the ITU from time to time, and we are supporting this 7 gigahertz band because it is being identified globally. The 6 gigahertz band also we are watching, and some of the countries, even region 3 countries like China and some more countries, they are pushing for the IMT, and this can also be looked into based on the sharing studies. Many of the sharing studies are supportive to the IMT. This is the allocations in the 6 and 7 gigahertz band. So wherein we are already having satellite services in the whole of the 59252 to 7125 megahertz. We are having fixed services also, wherein the backhaul networks, microwave access backhaul of the TSPs are operating in pan-India level. Satellite, we are having FSS uplink in the lower portion. In the upper portion, we are having uplink, downlink both. That is appendix 30B plan band also. So we are having extensive use of satellite as well as fixed services also. There are some other uses from the different countries, which is mostly that's, from the Russian side, this space operation service, some radio astronomy services, and some Earth exploration passive services is also there, which are mostly from the European countries. They are doing in this whole band, they are doing this microwave sensors measurement on the oceans and all. So these are the allocations. We are having certain uplink assignments also, some earth stations also in India. So those are the assignments we have in the India. Most of the region 1 countries are supportive of the IMT identification at the WRC 23 in the 6 gigahertz as well as the 7 gigahertz also, because it is 7 gigahertz is for the global identification, except UK, Germany, Sweden, who are yet to decide that which side they want to go. Some countries like France, Finland, Latvia, they want to identification of the IMT with effect from 2030 for this 6G. Denmark, Norway, they are as of now supporting the no change, and the Spain, Italy are generally supporting the satellite protection in this band. 20 countries, 20 studies are there for the FSS uplink scenario, wherein the 16 studies are for the global beam, out of which the 11 studies are supportive of the IMT, and 5 are not supportive of the IMT. 8 hemi-beam studies are there, out of which 5 supportive and 3 are not supportive. Zonal beam studies, out of 5, all 5 are supporting the IMT. 6 spot beam studies, all are 50-50 ratio, 3 are supportive, 3 are not supportive. There are some assumptions for doing those studies, like the deployment scenario of this RARB values which have been projected from the working party 5D, but the many countries are depending upon their suitability, they are choosing the RARB values, and then collateral loss model, antenna modeling, and then apportionment for the primary services which are having in this frequency band. So depending upon their requirement, they are suggesting different assumptions for those parameters, and accordingly the study results are also varying. This 16 global beam studies are having from Russia, China, France, Japan, UAE, and some other manufacturer and other operators in this segment. The studies from IFI and GSOA in Marset and some island countries are showing that IMT is not feasible because it is not meeting the protection criteria. Some island countries are supporting the RLAN and Wi-Fi also in this band, like my previous speakers are also telling that Wi-Fi whole 1200 megahertz is required for the Wi-Fi. But yes, of course, Wi-Fi is also required, but IMT is also equally important. So we have to think upon, depending upon the sharing studies, which third entrants can be allowed, maybe for the whole band or maybe for the partition of the band through band segmentation all. Both the technologies are required. Wi-Fi, maybe we are sitting in the room, we are latching on the Wi-Fi, but once we go out, we need the backhaul network, we need the IMT network, wherein we cannot be rely on the Wi-Fi. So both the balance is required. There are so many sharing studies which are showing the feasibilities also, but yes, with the different assumptions. So we can think on that. There are the studies which are showing the coexistence of the IMT with the fixed services also. Need of the separation distance, which can also be met through the coordination with the respective users of the fixed services. In this frequency bands also, we are having around 5 methods to satisfy this agenda item. Mainly the methods are having to identify this IMT through the footnote and having some conditions, having through PFD mask and all for protection of the satellite uplink and the other services. So different resolutions are being developed for the different methods, and we can keep a watch on that, and we can decide that on which resolution will be suitable for the Indian context and how to support or how to take a view on that. We can do on this. These are, sorry. Okay. This last slide. Okay. Yeah, this is the last slide. Okay. So the key issues for these, both of the bands are considering the incumbent stakeholders. We have to decide that what to take a view from the regulatory perspective, what the PFD levels, whether for this 4.8 gigahertz and for the 6 gigahertz and 7 gigahertz also, we have to keep a watch, and we have to support appropriately different sharing studies which are more suitable for the Indian context. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meghwal. Thank you. And may I request Mr. Satyan Gupta, because you are from the organizers' side, so I will take this liberty to request you to say, quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really thankful to ITU-APT EC to nominate me for this interesting session in the August company of the experts. And it has been a great learning for me. Luckily, I don't have PPT because they would have been duplicate if it it was there as Mr. Allen and Premjit and Alok, they have already covered most of the aspects and most of the points actually. So my role has become very simple. Of course, to make it simple is more difficult than to show PPT, of course. So that is where is a challenge. But the main topic, Mr. Chairman, for this session, as you mentioned in the beginning, maximizing the socio-economic benefits of the 6 gigahertz band. So most of technology have been discussed, challenges, regulatory issues, but how to maximize the socio-economic benefits actually. For that actually there are 2-3 studies which have been quoted by some Mr. Allen and also Premjit. One is our own Indian Professor Rekha Jain's study of BIF where she predicted that 6 gigahertz spectrum value will be 15 billion USD. That was too low because I found out she has only concentrated only what we call consumer benefits. What will be the benefit to the user? She did not took the overall actually aspect, like there are 3 players here when we talk of Wi-Fi or for that matter, the 6 gigahertz spectrum. One is the government itself, the owner, like WPC, our chairman itself and Mr. Megwal. So what is their benefit? Second is of course the providers, that is the operators or service provider. And third is the consumer. Now if we can somehow make a sigma of all these 3 benefits, the state benefit, provider benefit and consumer benefit, then we can come out with a maximization of the consumer benefits. Another study which I like to quote, though it is very old, it is called PCAST report, which was submitted to President Obama in the US Senate about 15 years back. That report actually quantified the value of the unlocking of a spectrum if you unlicense it. And you know what was the number versus the licensed spectrum. Suppose 6 gigahertz is licensed and it is unlicensed. If licensed spectrum value is, let us say, 1 trillion, if you unlicense that spectrum, its value will be 1,000 trillion. That is the PCAST report actually. That is what should be driving all of us if we want to maximize the 6 gigahertz spectrum value or benefit. It has to be unlicensed. And that is so, but it is easier said than done. We have to take from the Indian perspective, like we have seen the global perspective, Indian perspective, what government has been doing. Actually, for last 4 years, actually Indian needs are totally different actually. So most of the things are shown for the urban side actually, especially even the CUTS report, Mr. Amol have shown 8 Indian cities actually where they will do that research, but that is not what is required. We have to make use of the Wi-Fi to connect the unconnected. 50% of our rural population is unconnected with data, though they may be connected with voice. It was shown 2G, 3G in the morning also. So about 100 million rural people are still don't have access to broadband. And only way to reach them is Wi-Fi. Why Wi-Fi? Because even at 5 gigahertz, it is free band. Affordability is an issue. And Wi-Fi makes it affordable. And as it is shown, 70% of the total traffic, even of urban, India is the highest data consumer. 70% of that is still going through Wi-Fi with the restricted resource, restricted spectrum. So what happens there? If you have so much pressure or load on the Wi-Fi and spectrum is less, what happens? Who suffers? It is the QS, quality of service. Though India is the cheapest data economy and most using data economy, but according to me, and that is my personal belief, it is the worst quality of service also. That is where the 6 gigahertz can solve the problem, because the quality of service casualty is mainly for lack of spectrum. Even in the licensed spectrum, the same thing happens. If operator is using less spectrum, even in the license, the quality of service goes down. In unlicensed also, it will go down. the government have come out with the NDCP. We have just 500,000 hotspots in the country, just 500,000. When NDCP came, it was 500,000. Now we are 500,000. What the NDCP says by 2022, this month, and we should have got 1 million hotspots, and next year we should have got 2 million. We are nowhere near that. Then they came with PM Mani, the Prime Minister's, the master program of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Wi-Fi access network interface, the big support by the government, lot of unregulation, lot of decentralization, lot of just giving away, light regulation, but still it is not happening. Why it is not happening? Because they are concentrating only in urban. So you are not going in rural. And rural, if you go, and IT professors have come out with a concept, and that is where the 6G will play important role. That is called frugal 5G. Like Paramjit also shown, and Mr. Allen also, the 5G have its own challenges, the spectrum cost, the power, the cost, the affordability. When you go to rural, 5G, the people will not be able to afford, and they may even not need it if you give them connectivity actually. And it is not only the benefit of the users, what is shown, the provider surplus also happens. How it happens? There is a concept called MDO, mobile data offload. Like by using Wi-Fi in the last mile, you can use your core, you can use the licensed spectrum for fixed wireless access, you reach a spot and then offload it to Wi-Fi. You can save a lot of cost actually. And that means the unlicensed spectrum will be complementing IMT spectrum. It is not a competition. It is not either or. It will be and. Even the provider will need it. Provider is already using it actually. He is already using 70% of his traffic is going to Wi-Fi. Actually, there is a case 100% of his traffic can go to Wi-Fi. If 6 gigahertz is also opened, there is more spectrum in the access. It is affordable, means it is opened up. And in India especially, one is this 5G, frugal 5G for the rural. Other thing what we use, and our spectrum managers are here, a concept called NINENP. NINENP stands for non-interference, non-exclusive, non-protected. So whenever the Indian government opens up the spectrum, whether it is 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, they put this condition. And not only this, they also put a lot of restriction on the power side. So what happens in that case, if there is a restricted power and you are unlicensing it NINENP principle, then you don't have to be worrying about the license spectrum. You don't have to be worrying about the existing user. Actually, there is a study again by BIF, and it has proven this. If you open up this half of the 6 gigahertz spectrum for Wi-Fi, no interference will happen with the space or even with IMT, though IMT is not there yet in India on that spectrum. So NINP principle is there. Power, you are reducing it, less than a watt actually. So it cannot create interference. And when you talk of indoor only, like some examples are shown, a lot of the countries have opened up the 1200 megahertz, but half of them are only indoor. What it does, beauty of indoor Wi-Fi is, it cannot go outdoor. If it cannot go outdoor, it cannot interfere with your space. The same thing is, if something is coming from outdoor Wi-Fi, it cannot go indoor. That is the beauty of Wi-Fi, and that beauty is, of course, is a artificial restriction created by the low power there actually. But that should be made use of actually. There are various experiences, various empirical formula. So we can do it actually. Coexistence should be the name of the game. The operator should be motivated to offload their data on the Wi-Fi, just getting the free spectrum. And whosoever makes use of that spectrum, he will be their consumer. He will be their customer. So what is the problem? So with that, I think I'd like to stop, Mr. Chairman, but this is what I thought should be brought to the knowledge of all of you and all our listeners. Thank you very much.
This really something very important. First of all, it can really bridge the digital divide, the society in which we live. Second thing, he said that some of the restrictions can be removed to make the applications even more make the use of the spectrum even more universal for more number of applications, and the services can even coexist. And so there is no harm in doing things. For example, indoor environment, we can start in a very limited way. We can start the activity. So that way, he talked about the consumer surpluses and then the benefit, overall benefit that brings to the society when you de-license a spectrum. And I totally agree with you, and I have taken your point on the suggestions that you made from a spectrum manager's point of view. Well noted, sir. Thank you so much. And so I take this opportunity to thank all our participants. It has been quite instructive for me, quite educative for me to be among you. Thank you, ITU-APT Foundation. Thank you, Mr. Bharat Bhatia, for inviting us and giving us an opportunity to be part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Session Chair, Mr. Patnaik, to do the honors of presenting mementos as a token of gratitude and appreciation to our eminent keynote presenters. We present to Sri Paramjit Singh Puri, Director of Membership Wi-Fi Alliance, study for 6 gigahertz. Was his Thank you, sir. We present to Mr. Amol Kulkarni, Director Research, Consumer Unity and Trust Society International. Thank you very much indeed, sir. We present to our eminent speaker, Sri Leeladhar Meghwal. He is the Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor. And thank you very much indeed. I would now request Dr. Satya Gupta, Secretary General IAFI, to do the honors of presenting a memento to Sri M.K. Patnaik, Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor, WPC, our distinguished chairperson for this session. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for wonderfully moderating this session. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for doing the honors. Can we request our panel for a group photograph? And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have come to the last session of this conference. I would request everyone to kindly remain seated as we straight away move to the next session, which is session 4 on delivering a 6G R&D roadmap, India's 6G vision and the R&D roadmap. Requesting everyone else to kindly remain seated. We kindly give us 1 minute while